Welcome to another episode of The Brand Called You, a podcast and podcast show that brings you leadership lessons, knowledge, experience, and wisdom from thousands of individuals from around the world. I'm your host, Ashutosh Garg, and today I'm privileged to welcome a very senior and accomplished professional from Lausanne, Switzerland, Nadine Hack. Nadine, welcome to the show.
Thank you. It's my pleasure to be with you, Ashutosh.
Thank you. Nadine is the CEO of Because Global Consulting. She is a senior advisor to Because's sister nonprofit, Global Citizen Circle. She is amongst the top 100 thought leaders and has often enough, she's also got the Lifetime Achievement Trust Award. She's a coach. She specializes in CSR, ESG, DEI, SDG, and handles a lot of other things. And she's been recognized, awarded, and felicitated globally. What an amazing career you've had so far, Nadine.
Thank you.
So Nadine, let's talk about Because Consulting.
Sure.
Tell me a little bit about this venture and the work that you do.
So Because is all about connectedness. We help individuals and organizations to connect to and align with, first, their own core purpose, something that's often lost in the frenzy of today's hyperactivity that can distract us from keeping our eye on the ball that we actually care about. Then to connect across silos within our enterprises to promote synergies versus the hemorrhaging of opportunities. Just think about how much is lost when business lines don't communicate, or even people sitting in the next cubicle act in isolation. And then in the next concentric circle, to connect with external stakeholders, those who are friendly, like our suppliers, vendors, partners, but even those who aren't, as I describe in my TEDx, adversaries to allies, to make the very most of our associations and or our coalitions in an ever more interconnected world. We offer senior executive coaching and mentoring to leaders and their teams to help them clarify their goals and overcome obstacles to achieve them. And I really believe that connectedness begins with being connected to yourself. There's a reason why on airlines they say, put your own oxygen mask on before you try to help anybody else.
Well said.
So going beyond being highly competent and growing into becoming a great leader always starts with a deepening self-awareness, which I find simultaneously enhances compassion for yourself and others. Thus, the more self-aware one becomes, owning and integrating our totality, the good, the bad, the ugly,
correct,
the greater the likelihood that we'll get the best out of ourselves and others. And to claim one's agency, I try to tease out the unspoken, often as a designated challenger, but always as an advocate of aiding self-discovery. And also, as you said, with a particular focus on sustainability, diversity, inclusion, corporate social responsibility, human rights, and other issues for 21st century business. As Because as CEO, I often give keynote speeches and other presentations, and I'm right now in the process of completing writing a book called The Power of Connectedness, which has a foreword by Archbishop Desmond Tutu.
Wow, that's amazing. So, you mentioned that you're doing a lot of coaching and mentoring, and we'll talk a little bit about that if we have time. But you also do a lot of work with the Global Citizens Circle.
Yes.
Tell me a little bit about what is the Global Citizen Circle and the work that you do.
So, Because has a sister not-for-profit, Global Citizen Circle, founded in 1974. Which has convened more than 27,000 extremely diverse individuals. From world leaders like Nelson Mandela, other heads of state and Nobel laureates, to local activists, ordinary people doing extraordinary things. And facilitated challenging discussions
Mm.
on the world's pressing issues.
Mm-hmm.
It's broadly inclusive by age, race, political perspective, and multiple other differences.
Mm.
And we engage in dialogue and subsequent action to tackle problems that transcend nations or sectors. And we really believe that people make change, and that applies whether in a corporate hierarchy or in a global social movement.
Mm-hmm.
So for almost half a century, we've been connecting and empowering emerging leaders and respected elders to listen to and learn from each other.
Mm-hmm.
And since COVID, the circles have been held on Zoom,
Mm.
and this has increased our global reach as participants can join in these highly interactive sessions from anywhere.
Wow.
And yet we've maintained the underlying value that everybody's voice has value.
Mm.
And that mutually respectful interactions in a safe environment yields remarkable results.
Mm.
So discussion leaders who are experts in their field open with extremely brief remarks, 5 to 10 minutes max,
Mm-hmm.
and then gifted moderators engage all the participants in a lively exchange for most of the 90-minute circles.
Okay.
And we've had, just to give you a sense, we've had a former white nationalist neo-Nazi co-lead a circle with a longtime civil rights activist,
Mm-hmm.
a conservative Republican and a progressive Democrat in the United States Congress co-lead another.
Mm.
We're also very intentional about highlighting young leaders. Like when we invited then Harvard Law School student Barack Obama to a 1991 circle,
Yeah.
or when we had Lauren Hogg, then a 16-year-old co-founder of March for Our Lives, to co-lead a 2019 circle with 92-year-old Dolores Huerta, the co-founder of the 1970s United Farm Workers Strike, or when we had a 14-year-old middle school student co-lead a 2008 circle in Soweto, South Africa, with Nigerian Chief Emeka Anyuko, the first African to be Secretary General of the Commonwealth countries.
Wow. Wow. And the Global Citizen Circle, I'm assuming, works across multiple countries, across different subjects.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Our discussion leaders have come from more than 53 countries, and the participants come from all over the world.
Amazing. Amazing. So, Nadine, let's now move on and talk a little bit about your other passion, which is diversity, equity, and inclusion. Let me start by asking you that there is a lot of talk going on about inclusion all over the world. How much is actually being achieved?
Yeah. Sadly, not as much as I would have liked to believe we would have accomplished, having been at this since the 1970s.
Yeah.
In fact, someone who knew me from the mid-'80s was in a vintage shop, and leafing through a 1970 Rolling Stone magazine, found a picture of me holding up a sign, "Women are not sex objects."
Okay.
And as soon as they shared it with me, I posted it on social media, and I received scores of kind of disheartened comments like, "Oh no, nothing's changed. You could be holding that sign today." And I responded to each of them. And while I assured them that I truly wished we were further along in this long relay race for equality of gender, race, and every type of difference, we were not where we were in the 1970s. And, you know, this, that progress is never just a straight line up. It's kind of like a up and down, but as
long as the direction is clear.
The arc of justice is long, but the arc of history is long, but it bends towards justice. So it's always been true that the more types of people who are at the table, the more comprehensive will be the decision-making process. And now in our hyper-connected world, when companies recruit, invest in, and try to retain talent with different perspectives, they're far better positioned to have a multifaceted response to the complex challenges we face. Diversity and inclusion, I want to make this very clear, that it's not a tick the box exercise,
Correct.
which for too many companies it is. it's like a talk the talk, but not walk the walk.
Mm,
It's an absolutely vital need to prevail at the cutting edge.
absolutely.
And while just about every company on earth now has to have their de rigueur version of a DEI vision statement, but few have truly integrated it into their actual practices or decision-making processes,
Correct.
which involve conscious behavioral changes. So we must nourish what each person has within, so that collectively we all advance. Equity is not an issue just for women, minorities, or other disenfranchised groups.
Yeah.
Everybody benefits from it.
Correct. Yeah, you're right. I mean, everybody must understand that equity impacts every single human being. And
Always.
absolutely, I agree. So my next question to you is, given the amount of work you are doing in diversity, equity, inclusion, do you see any kind of an impact of culture on how thinking about DEI happens across cultures?
Yeah, well, I actually have the greatest hope for the future because of the millennials and the Gen X, Y, and Z. Because for them, DEI is not an abstraction.
Correct.
With a deeper awareness, they have a far greater acceptance of difference. They celebrate it, they embrace it. In fact, they demand it. More values driven. They want to work in environments that genuinely seek diversity and inclusion from entry level to the C-suite and the board level.
Correct.
And as customers, they want to purchase goods and services from companies that foster DEI, as well as other dimensions of corporate social responsible corporate citizenship, like fair trade, environmental advocacy, et cetera. So as these generations become the largest part of our employee and consumer base, which is already happening, and by 2025, they will comprise 75% of the workforce.
Well
That's
said,
tomorrow.
Yeah.
Companies will have to adapt accordingly. A recent study shows that 88% of them say their job is more fulfilling when their employers provide opportunities to make a positive impact in the world. And 3/4 of them would actually take a pay cut to work for a socially responsible business.
Wow.
And this has huge implications for DEI and also the broader spectrum of corporate social responsibility, such as human rights, and a host of, as you hinted to earlier, the ESG, environmental, social, and governance dimensions, and the SDGs, the 17 UN social development goals. And that's happening. According to the latest S&P sustainability report, the push to integrate gender diversity, for example, in investment criteria has increased, and at least 15 new publicly traded gender lens equity funds were launched just in the last half dozen years.
Wow.
So I suggest to everyone, be the one who walks into any meeting and asks the question, what's wrong with this picture? When you see all white men, help your enterprise become more diverse. Or in your case, you're in India, all Indian men.
I'm with you. I understand. Yeah. Wonderful. And you think that the millennials and the Gen Z, the younger people who are now coming into leadership roles, they will actually make a significant difference by 2025, is what you just mentioned, isn't it?
I really believe so, and I hope it's for the positive. You framed your question about culture, and Peter Drucker, who's like the grandfather of modern management theory, my favorite quote is his when he said, "Culture eats strategy for breakfast."
Correct.
A culture is so powerful, and I really hope that this generation from whom I draw tremendous inspiration and from whom I learned so much. I said earlier that I do a lot of coaching and mentoring, but it's most often two directional. Like I learn as much, not just from 20 somethings, but even teens as they learn from me. Yep. They have such a unique window into the world, and they expand my vision of the world through theirs. And of course, on the technology side, they're like guru. At my age, I've passed my 70s. I'm in my 8th decade of living.
Wow.
I'm certainly not a digital native.
Amazing.
But, so any team that I ever assemble, I always make sure that there are people from that age group in it, because I'll say something like, okay, I think what we should do is XYZ. And the XYZ is correct in terms of directional guidance. But then they say, well, how about if we do ABC? And their ABC is always exponentially better than my XYZ, because they get my direction, but they're so much more innovative about how to act on that direction, how to communicate so that people will understand, how to communicate visually, how to communicate in tight, there's a lot of people are distressed by the fact that our world has been reduced to sound bites. And I agree with that, because you do need context to understand issues. However, they do know how to very clear, concise, compelling way convey a message that's digestible. And I really hope that it will transform culture.
I hope so. So Nadine, now moving on, and this question is for the many, many people who will listen to our conversation.
Yeah.
In such an amazing career that you have had, over so many years, and I must mention to you that you don't look anywhere near what you just mentioned. But I do want to.
It's God and genes. I can't take any credit for it.
Okay. Well, why not? I mean, but whatever it is, I mean, I think you're looking very nice. And
thank you.
What would your life lessons be for the young people who will be listening to our conversation?
Okay, so if I were to distill what we've been talking about and maybe try to come up with 3 life lessons. 1, be self-aware.
Okay.
Have a willingness to be vulnerable and transparent.
Yeah.
It will be the difference between being highly competent or becoming a great leader. It's the cornerstone to be able to relate to and benefit from the wisdom of others. And as I said, in the process of doing so, we also gain greater compassion for ourselves and each other. I think my second one would be that in the context of today's world, as global pandemics, climate change, growing political instability, and other knotty issues, these issues are without boundaries. They don't recognize the map.
Correct.
Everything affects all else.
Mm.
So you must cultivate relationships with people who operate in completely different spheres from yourself to ensure that you can overcome challenges and achieve great things.
Very
and yeah, and then I guess the third one, and they're all kind of interconnected to each other, is living in an incredibly VUCA time, you know, the volatile, uncertain, complex, and ambiguous. We must be ready to shift perceptions and seek out innovative alternatives that we're most likely to find in contact with others, with a broader spectrum of others. And when we embrace how intertwined we are, we find big picture solutions.
Very interesting. So, Nadine, I have time for two more questions. And my next question to you is about your book. You just mentioned that you're writing your book, and,
Yes.
and the foreword has been written by, I think, the late Bishop Desmond Tutu, who I had the honor of meeting many years ago in Cape Town. Tell me a little bit about your book, and when do you think it's going to be published?
Okay, so my book comes in the context of my life's work. And I founded because to help people and organizations understand how to create and sustain collaborative initiatives where each individual benefits and the whole is always greater than the sum of the parts. And, to deal with the complexity in our world, or even your own operation, or even in one of its B-lines, we must broaden our scope. And as I've always believed in the value of relationships, I've been facilitating cooperative multi-stakeholder partnerships since the 1970s. And in the 1990s, I formalized that work into my company because, and in 2010, I was invited to become the first female executive in residence at IMD Business School, where I was able to distill decades of work into teachable lessons about how engaging a more expansive range of stakeholders increases productivity, profitability, sustainability, along with creating greater individual and team satisfaction. And because this proprietary strategic relational engagement teaches the ability to step outside one's territorial position, to recognize the humanity in others, and to be extremely clear about objectives. I can't emphasize strongly enough how many partnerships I've seen fail simply because the stakeholders didn't upfront commit to exactly what they plan to contribute to it and exactly what they hope to get out of their engagement with others. So, and I also formed the company because I really wanted to create the type of working environment I would have loved to be in, one that's egalitarian, inclusive, transparent, encouraging each individual's growth and development. And the book was such a natural outgrowth of that. The book is it's kind of my legacy project. It's my way of saying, here's what I've learned about how to create strong relationships on the personal level, on the familial level, on the community level, on in the work level, in the social level, but also what are the challenges at each of those levels? On the personal level, what keeps you from fully claiming who you are and showing your full self? What stops families, small things that people hold grudges for decades and rupture families. And so I'm sharing extremely personal stories in each case about when it's worked, but honestly, more of the stories about when it hasn't worked, or what have been the problems and what I've learned from it. Because and that you can be wounded and still do great work.
Correct.
Because I often call myself a wounded warrior. It's part of life. You cannot be alive and not have experienced some form of suffering. I mean, obviously, depending upon where you are in the world, the suffering is more intense than others. We only have to think about Syrian refugees or Ukrainian refugees and people in the Democratic Republic of the Congo. I mean, there's places where obviously it's been extremist, but there's no human being who hasn't experienced suffering. And I believe that if people see, I think that people think, that a lot of books about leadership and about, success, tend to focus on the to-do list, the positive affirmative to-do list. And I want people to know you're human. We're all human. We have our foibles. We have our shortcomings.
Mm.
Despite whatever level of suffering we have gone through, we have the capacity to use that like alchemists, to
Yeah.
process through
Yeah.
that
Mm.
and to come out the other side,
Mm.
like actually stronger at the broken places.
Well said. Well said. Well said. Nadine, I'm afraid we've run out of time, but on that note, thank you so much for speaking to me. Thank you for talking to me about Because Global Consulting, about the Global Citizen Circle and the amazing work that's happening there. Thank you for talking to me about DEI and for sharing your thoughts about how the world is getting more inclusive, but a lot more needs to be done. And most importantly, thank you for sharing your life lessons as well as so much information about your book. I'm certainly looking forward to reading your book once it's
My
published.
goal is finished manuscript end of 2022.
Wonderful. Wonderful.
Fingers crossed.
I'm sure you'll be there. Thank you again for speaking to me and good luck to you.
Thank you so much. Be well.
Thank you for listening to the Brand Called You videocast and podcast, a platform that brings you knowledge, experience, and wisdom of hundreds of successful individuals from around the world. Do visit our website www.tbcy.in to watch and listen to the stories of many more individuals. You can also follow us on YouTube, Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter. Just search for the Brand Called You.